Hello, welcome back to The Road to Episode 9, my ongoing series where I chart the road to the release of Star Wars Episode 9 on the 20th of December 2019. And this is kind of the first official Road to Episode 9 video. We kick things off with my 2+ hour review of The Last Jedi, so if you haven't seen that and are intrigued to hear my full thoughts, you can go check that out. But there's still a lot of Last Jedi stuff to cover. But for this video, I want to just talk a little bit about Episode 9, just to kind of kick things off on the right foot as we move forward. Past this video, I'll be talking about Rian Johnson's thoughts on The Last Jedi and some of the decisions that he made in the film. Of course, now that the movie's been out a few weeks, there have been all these interviews that have come out. There's been the whole Mark Hamill controversy. We'll get all into that kind of stuff. But for now, for this one, I want to just solely focus on Episode 9, the very little we have to go on. Although there have been a few things that have been talked about over the past couple of weeks. It's now been a month, pretty much, since The Last Jedi came out. And there's more I want to talk about that film. Going to see it 8 times, going to see it in IMAX, in 4DX. I want to make a whole video about that experience. So there's a lot to come in The Road to Episode 9, and even more than that, because something that I did with The Road to Episode 7 was I did reviews of some of the books and things like that, which I didn't do too much of in The Road to Episode 8. And to be honest, I never thought that I'd even get this far with these Road 2 videos. I really just wanted to focus on Episode 7. I almost didn't even do the Road to Episode 8 because I thought, well, it's just not going to be the same. And it wasn't. It wasn't the same. The hype wasn't as big, it wasn't as huge. But ultimately, you know, The Last Jedi for me became so much more special than The Force Awakens, and is the one I'll be looking back on even more fondly in the future, I think. As a Star Wars fan, this has been a really special time for me. So there's a lot more I want to talk about The Last Jedi, but also we've got the new Han Solo movie coming out, so there's a lot to talk about. I feel a lot more amped up for this Road to Episode 9 series than I did the Road to Episode 8 when I started that. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. I'm just rambling on at this point. Let's get to the Episode 9 stuff. The very little that we know so far. We know that JJ Abrams, who of course will be directing the film, has pitched the movie to Bob Iger, the head of Disney. I'm not too sure how much we should read into that. He pitched the movie. You know, I don't think that it's really JJ Abrams going in there and saying, okay, Bob, here's what we're going to do. Can we do it? But, I mean, for me, from what I've understood, Lucasfilm, headed by Kathleen Kennedy, is Lucasfilm, and they're owned by Disney, but they do their own thing with, you know, the stories and the Star Wars universe and the movies and things like that. I don't get the impression, and from the few things that I've heard, that Disney are this kind of imposing presence where they're saying you must do this and you must do that. And I know a lot of people like to kind of buy into that. They like to think that it's this Disney agenda, which, you know, hey, maybe there is some truth to it. It'd be impossible to really tell with any certainty, but I do know that Lucasfilm very much does operate on its own kind of thing at the same time. So I don't know why JJ pitching the movie to Bob Iger would be anything too big, unless really it's just a kind of, hey, heads up, here's where we're going to go with the last film in this trilogy. But either way, that has been reported that I think it was even like the week of The Last Jedi coming out, or the week afterwards, that JJ went and met with Bob Iger and told him what they're doing with Episode 9. Now, also going back to when Colin Trevorrow was directing Episode 9, we've now heard the story that he told Daisy Ridley. Colin Trevorrow, he told her the ending of his Episode 9, and she cried when he told her. And I just spoke to Brian Lomax, who told me that he felt like crying when he watched the Book of Henry because it was that bad. So maybe it was that kind of a cry. I don't know how that is going to slot into things, which is really interesting, because there's, you know, 99% of Star Wars fans in the world will never know at this point what's going on with the script of Episode 9, how it's been changed. If it's been changed, who knows? Maybe JJ is literally just kind of picking what Colin Trevorrow was writing and is now going to do that. But of course, obviously, he's not, because he's writing the script along with Chris Terrio, who co-wrote Batman v Superman. There's been a lot of jokes about that, and the whole Martha thing, you know, and many people saying, well, we're just going to see, you know, Rey and Kylo in an ultimate showdown at the end of Episode 9, and, you know, Kylo's about to kill Rey with his lightsaber, and she's like, Uncle Luke! Wait, what? Oh, I just realized my dad had a brother called Luke, so I also have an Uncle Luke. Your uncle's called Luke too? Can we just be best friends? So there's been a lot of jokes about the whole Martha thing in the Batman v Superman film, and that now Chris Terrio is writing the script for Episode 9 with JJ. And what I mean by, like, if the thing has been changed or not, is because obviously Colin Trevorrow, and I'm not sure who he was writing the film with, if he was even writing it, I don't actually know. And some of these things we never will know, but it's a tricky thing, because there was Michael Arndt, who was involved in writing episode 7, then he left, and then JJ took over along with Lawrence Kasdan. So I find it interesting when people are writing the film and then they go away. But this has been the norm since the beginning of Star Wars being handed off to other filmmakers. With The Empire Strikes Back, Lee Brackett, a woman who was writing the film for George Lucas, I think she passed away. Yeah, she passed away. And her script was, I mean, she was credited, but it was really vastly different from what the film ended up being once Lawrence Kasdan took over. So it's been happening since the beginning. Obviously not when George Lucas was doing the prequels, and perhaps someone should have maybe co-wrote those films with him just to kind of rein him back a little bit on some of the dialogue, or push forward with some better dialogue. Anyway, that's just, we'll leave the prequels to the side. So yeah, I'm getting kind of jumbled around here. Hopefully I'm making sense, but yeah, so we have JJ Abrams and Chris Terrio writing episode 9. I have to assume that they're kind of reworking it from the ground up, especially since Colin Trevorrow was fairly vocal in saying that his episode 9, what I'm going to do with episode 9 is give Leia a huge part. And that was kind of going to follow a trend with Han and Luke and Leia having their spotlight movies throughout this trilogy, which made a lot of sense to me, but obviously, for obvious reasons, that's not going to happen. So again, I'd be interested to kind of hear, well, what was the original episode 9 plan? How was Leia going to play into it? Why was Daisy Ridley crying when she heard the end of the film? We may never know. You know, it's the same as the Rogue One kind of controversy about the reshoots and stuff, and they've kept very tight-lipped about that and didn't really talk about it at all, and had no deleted scenes on the Blu-ray. So, I guess they want to pick and choose how much they reveal, although apparently in the Art of the Last Jedi book, which I haven't bought or read or anything like that, there's actually a lot of stuff in there about the influences of George Lucas's original treatments for 7, 8, and 9, his ideas for the story of the new trilogy, and apparently it's not actually that far off from what we got, and a lot of his ideas for episode 7 were mainly held off until The Last Jedi, which is kind of interesting. But I've always said I really wanted to kind of read or just see what was George's original vision for this new trilogy, because he has been very cagey and inconsistent with his kind of public speakings on the sequel trilogy, whether it even existed at all. Like, oh no, it was only ever 6 movies. Yet back in the 70s, he's like, oh yeah, it's 12 movies, and then I think in the 2000s, he's like, no, there is no episode 7. And then he's like, hey guys, I'm selling, and and here's episode 7, 8, and 9 that I've been working on. So, I'd love to just kind of get the full, kind of unedited George Lucas version of what he would have done. And then again, I'd be intrigued to see what Colin Trevorrow would have done. Just out of interest more than anything. I'm glad that he isn't, because I just, I was never that enthusiastic with him as the director of episode 9. Anyway, so JJ Abrams, Chris Terrio writing episode 9, JJ directing, and he pitched it to Bob Iger. That's that. The other piece of episode 9 news, which is to no surprise of anyone really, is that John Williams has confirmed that he will be doing episode 9 next year, scoring the movie, obviously doing the soundtrack, and he said, I would very much like to complete that one, which, it's understandable. He's approaching his 86th birthday. He also talked recently about just the idea of him still working. He says that, I'm still, I'm still writing. I don't think I'll ever stop writing. I can still play piano. I've got no arthritis issues. I'm loving doing what I'm doing, and there's no real reason for me to stop. And I have to be, honest and say that I'm really holding out hope that he makes it, because again, 86, he's not exactly the youngest composer on the block, but not just to be able to score it, but to be able to kind of, see the film and, to kind of experience the, the release of it and everything like that, and maybe get nominated for another Oscar. Not that he needs it, but, it's always nice. I find it really kind of sad that, Carrie Fisher passed and she never got to see this film get, although maybe it would have been, not the best to see how much it got trashed, particularly her scene or her big scene in the film. But I think she probably would have found a lot of humor in that. I saw this video online of someone had edited Leia's kind of spacewalk into flying through the Supremacy ship with Superman's theme music, and the first thing I thought was, I bet Carrie Fisher would have found that hilarious. She would have taken it in good humor, I think, but I just find it sad that she didn't get to experience the release of it and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so getting way ahead of, track there, and thinking about John Williams, if he's going to die or not before he gets to score episode 9. But I really hope, just as that kind of completist thing inside me as well, like, it would be so cool if he got to kind of complete that legacy, and to do the 9 movies. It'd be really, really fucking cool, because at this point, the only constant in all of the episodic Star Wars films is John Williams. That's it. He's the one constant that is all, unless you take like the characters of 3PO and R2-D2, he's the one constant as far as someone working on the films. And, the original trilogy score is just absolutely legendary, and then the prequel score is arguably the best thing about those films. Like, it's just technically, it's just, the music's incredible. And for the sequel trilogy, I think he's done a stellar job. I love the scores for Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. So I'm really glad that he is eager to come back and do episode 9. I think they said at the beginning, to be honest, he's going to come back and do this new trilogy, but obviously, even then, when they announced that he was still in his early 80s, it's like, is he going to make it? And I'm really glad that he has come this far in his life. That's a horrible thing to say, but whatever. And has done these films. It's been really cool. And also, he will be doing the theme for Solo, A Star Wars Story. There's another composer attached to do the full soundtrack for the new spin-off movie, but John Williams will be doing the theme of the movie, which is probably going to be some sort of like hero theme for Han or something like that, I suppose, which is really cool and appropriate, and I'm really glad about that. There's just something so unmistakable about it. On my flight back here a few days ago, I was listening to the score from The Last Jedi, and just really listening to all the instruments and all the kind of intricacies of the orchestration. It's just such a fucking genius piece of work. And a lot of film scores are, when you really just listen to them isolated from the movie, you really get to appreciate all the little details and stuff. But I mean, I've seen the film so many times now that when I listen to the score, I'm kind of playing the movie in my head, with all these signature moments and stuff. And the music is so integral to everything with Star Wars films, I think. I read a comment somewhere saying, oh yeah, the music was good, but did it have to be playing throughout the whole movie? And I'm like, yes! Give me more of the John Williams score, it's so good. Oh, and also, I guess I can throw this in there, the Last Jedi was thrown in for all the Oscar nominations, and I think it's kind of routine, for a movie that wants to campaign for Oscars. They'll just throw in everything they can, because there was this little picture leaked on, well, I don't know if it was leaked, but it was presented online, I suppose. I think it's leaked because they have like this Disney website where they kind of show all the things that they're kind of displaying for your consideration to the awards. The various awards, I suppose, the Golden Globes, the Oscars and stuff like that. So they're showing what they're throwing the nominations out there for. So like, even like Donald Gleason, is up for, well, not up for, but he's being presented as Best Supporting Actor, but also Adam Driver is, and Daisy Ridley Best Actress, and Mark Hamill Best Actor. Never going to happen, but I guess they're just throwing it out there just in case. But I think that there'll probably be a couple of nominations in the technical categories, more probably the sound editing, mixing maybe, and visual effects for sure, you have to imagine. And the score by John Williams, which may or may not get nominated. I think he's also going to be up for The Post with Steven Spielberg, which is probably going to be a film more likely to be nominated for Best Score. But where was I going with this? Right, so they had the For Your Consideration stuff go out a couple of weeks ago. And one thing someone found on Reddit was that they've basically presented an alternate score to the awards people, to the Oscars. It's not the official soundtrack that we got released on CD and online and digital, all that kind of stuff. There's new tracks that weren't released officially that are in the film, like the music that plays when Admiral Holdo shoots the ship through the Supremacy, like the build up to that. That isn't on the official soundtrack, but it's on this kind of For Your Consideration soundtrack, which someone found, and so you're able to kind of access it if you want to. It's online somewhere, but it's not an officially released thing. So there was a lot of music not included that's also on there, and alternate pieces as well. Some of it's been edited, because apparently they want to go more into the originally composed music, so they've kind of snipped out bits that were kind of recurrent themes from The Force Awakens, which is really weird. But I'd imagine it probably won't get nominated for Best Soundtrack. But anyway, so that was just a weird thing, because I was like, wow, there's this whole alternate version of the soundtrack, and it's really cool. Anyway, I'll leave it there. That was a really long one, and there's a lot more to talk about. in terms of The Last Jedi, but that's kind of where we are with episode 9. And I want to do a video talking about what I feel like we're going to see with episode 9, which only feels appropriate for this series. So I'll think about that and get back to you with the next video. So I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.